Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. The final scenario, number 5, is where fish gelatin is written on the ingredients label or this section on the, let's say, pack of pastels or whatever. Now here, the reason I'm using this fish gelatin because it's possible that I've heard that this kosher gelatin is from fishes. So this will include kosher gelatin as well, assuming that is the case. I'm not sure. Okay, so now we read that this gelatin has been extracted from a fish. Now, here different cases arise here. Does the fish have scales? That's the first thing that you have to establish. Assuming you know that the fish does have scales, it's of the type that has scales, then it has to be established whether the fish has been slaughtered on a par with the Islamic Sharia or not. And in this case, for fishes, their slaughtering is when it's taken out of the water alive. Okay? Or when it's grasped under the water with the net alive. But I don't want to go into details too much there. It has to come out of the water alive. If it does, that's regarded as being properly slaughtered. If it doesn't, that fish has not been slaughtered on a par with the Islamic Sharia and you won't be able to consume it. Okay? It's going to be tahir anyway, because fish, it doesn't have a pulsatile circulation. So here, even the corpse of such an animal, which doesn't have a pulsatile circulation, they will be tahir anyway, whether they've been slaughtered Islamically or not. So that's not an issue to concern ourselves too much. So here, let's say one knows that the fish has scales. The next question is, was it taken out of the water alive? Was it slaughtered Islamically? And that involves it being taken out alive. Assuming that it's been established before you that it has been taken out of the water alive, if it was in an Islamic country, you can assume it. If it wasn't in an Islamic country, you can't assume it. Okay? But someone may say, well, I know the law of the country, the law of the land says that, and I have certainty because of that. That's okay. That's okay. That would be sufficient for you. Okay? But, for example, you can't assume it in a non-Muslim country. If you go to a restaurant, you can't just assume that unless you know that the law of the land says this, and therefore you have certainty that the fishes have been taken out of the water alive. Or, for example, sometimes it may happen. I mean, it's happened to me quite a bit. For example, I give a speech somewhere, and then one of the audience, they come and say, I've made some fish for you. Well, here, I don't have to investigate, exactly the religiosity of the person and so on and so forth. The fact that I know that a Muslim hand has control over the making of this fish, that would be okay, that would be evidence for me. Even if I don't buy fish myself in a non-Muslim country, when I see a Muslim hand giving it me, I can presume that it's been, it's permissible to consume. Or someone takes you out to a restaurant and they're a very religious figure, such a figure won't take you because of their knowledge and everything. They won't take you to a place where they're not sure themselves whether the fish was taken out of the water alive, and then they take you and they invite you to this non-Muslim restaurant, and you see they have fish themselves, and then that can lead to your certainty too. There are many ways that things can lead to your certainty. However, in a non-Muslim country, you can't presume it though. Okay? Either you have to see it come out of the water alive, okay, or you have to acquire certainty through other ways. The law of the land, for example, this, that, and the other. And everyone to themselves. Okay? So maybe the fish in, let's say, these different restaurants which sell fillet fish, for someone, it's not substantiated before them. For someone, because of the law of the land, it may lead to their certainty. No one should criticize the other. No one should judge the other. Just let people live. Now, so here, the fish has scales and it's been substantiated before you that it has been slaughtered Islamically, i.e. it has been taken out of the water alive, such a fish, in addition to being tahir, it would be permissible to consume. However, if it's substantiated before you that this fish with scales hasn't been slaughtered Islamically, i.e. taken out of the water alive, or you don't know whether it's been Islamically slaughtered, here the next question is, does istihala arise or not? If you believe istihala to be realized, if it's substantiated before you, since it's tahir anyway, those branches with the porcine gelatin do not apply here, so it's tahir, and after istihala you can consume it, no problem. But if istihala doesn't arise, then the question has to be, does istihlaq arise or not? If istihlaq does arise, it's tahir anyway, but since all the traces of the unslaughtered fish have vanished, and it being tahir to start off with, it won't make the liquid muzaf medium najis. If istihlaq were to happen, it would be unproblematic to consume. It's permissible to consume. Whereas if istihlaq does not occur, you won't be allowed to consume it, because it wasn't Islamically slaughtered. The fish wasn't Islamically slaughtered, and it hasn't vanished. It's still there. Istihlaq hasn't happened. Therefore, you can't eat it, even though it is tahir. The next case is where you know that the fish doesn't have scales. Here, the question is that does istihala occur or not? If istihala, you know it doesn't have scales, okay? So that means you can't consume it, according to most of the maraji, most of the religious authorities. So the question now is, does istihala arise or not? If istihala is substantiated before you, it would be unproblematic to eat that gelatin, because it's tahir anyway, and with istihala it's a new specific form that is realized. But if istihala doesn't be realized, you have to see whether istihlaq happens or not. If istihlaq does happen, where all the traces of the fish has disappeared, and since it was tahir to start off with, it would be permissible to consume. Whereas if istihlaq were not to have occurred, then you're not allowed to consume it, because the fish wasn't slaughtered Islamically. In this case, not being slaughtered Islamically is the fish did not have scales. Okay, so it doesn't matter whether it's been Islamically slaughtered or not. That's why we didn't bring that classification here. It's irrelevant. Now, what if someone doesn't know if the fish has scales or not, and they enter the restaurant and now they want to, well, not the restaurant, sorry, they see the fish gelatin, but they don't know whether the fish is of the type that has scales or it doesn't have scales. Now this case will affect most of us here now. Here, the leader believes that the ruling is the same as if the fish has scales. So you have to go back and listen to what I've said. If the fish does have scales, all that applies, the same applies if you don't know whether the fish, that from which the gelatin has been extracted, has scales or not. You don't know. The same rulings which apply when you know that the fish has scales apply here too, according to the leader. However, most of the religious authorities, most of the maraji, believe that you have to regard it as not having scales. And that's quite a significant difference. وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطاهرين.